it out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 583rd edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. Tom is not here today. Today is the 25th of July, and we are covering news in energy and climate change from the 18th of July till the 24th. You can find the articles that I'm talking about by going to my blog, geoharvey.com, clicking on the date, and looking for the particular article among the 15 or so items that are there. If you go to the description of the show online, you'll find a bit.ly link to the show, the synopses that are actually used in the show at a site that Tom and I have used for setting the show up. So and at that site there's just 21 links to the 21 items that I'm talking about. And that may be an easier way to do it if you can. So I'm starting, as I said, on Thursday, July 18th, and I'm starting with an item from MSN. Let me get this up. There we go. The title says, Startup launches tabletop nuclear reactor using cold fusion to generate clean energy. In Hyderabad, Highliner says it has come up with a low-energy nuclear reactor that can be kept on a tabletop and produce enough energy to meet a household's needs. The company says it is the world's first cold fusion technology to generate clean energy. Now, before we get into this and get excited about what's going to happen as a result of it, I should explain cold fusion to you. This has been around for, I don't know how long, perhaps 40 years, 35 years anyway. The idea is fusion is taking atoms and putting them together to create atoms of an entirely different of an entirely different isotope, of an entirely different element. And that usually requires a huge amount of pressure and heat. Cold fusion is the same thing being done at a cold temperature. And people have been having attempts to do cold fusion for many years. The first attempts were reported and in peer-reviewed publications, but unfortunately, they were never, the people who tried were never able to duplicate the original tests. So I don't know what to say about that, except that it was something that just wasn't repeatable. I don't know whether it was actually happening or it was being imagined. I just don't know. Here we have a company saying that it's got a tabletop reactor that is able to supply all of the energy needs of a home. And if that's true, then it will revolutionize energy. I'm not holding my breath. So that's the one thing that I should say is I'm not holding my breath on that. So the next thing I'm going to do is give you a picture of King Charles III. This is from latest Renewable Energy News. The title is King's Speech Launches GB Energy and Takes Leash Off Crown Estate for Offshore Wind. King Charles III set out in Parliament the legislative agenda of the Labour government led by Keir Starmer, whose party swept to victory on the back of a highly ambitious pledge to kick fossil fuels off the UK grid by 2030. This is a pledge that is going to be hard to keep because the individual towns, what they call, what is the word? I forget what the word is. They have a word in England for municipal governments, but the local governments, many of them just don't want to have renewable energy. You know, I should mention, I think we're getting to a point. I just saw today that a recent day, the 21st, I think, of July, was the hottest day ever registered in history. It is in a July that will probably be the hottest July ever registered, after the hottest June ever registered, and it was the hottest month ever registered, recorded. Every month in the last 13, 14 months of the hottest years that we've had on record, every one of the 10 hottest was one of the last 10 years. It's hard to imagine that people would still be saying that climate change isn't happening, but they are, and I'm not sure why. And what's happening is that people who are afraid of wind power, solar power, whatever, are objecting to having it around. And as they object, they're putting off a solution which we're at a point now where it can't be put off anymore. And they're going to have the solution imposed upon them because the national governments are going to have to take a position on this, that they are going to put these plans together with or without the consent of the local municipal governments. And one of the things that I plan on writing about sometime very soon is the fact that we did something during the Second World War that people don't remember, which is that we told the automobile industry, for example, that it was not allowed to sell cars at all to new cars to ordinary citizens. And for almost the entire Second World War, no cars were made for ordinary distribution. GM didn't make any cars for sale. As a matter of fact, when the prohibition went into effect, any new cars that were on dealers' lots could not be sold. So they went from selling a car one day to not selling the car the next day because that prohibition went into effect, and it was in effect from early in 1942 until late in 1945. You couldn't buy a new car as an ordinary citizen in the United States. Every car had to be sold to a government body. And I think that kind of imposition is going to be put on municipal governments. Okay, we are at a point where, let's see, we have an item from Clean Technica. U.S. coal shipments declined 8% in 2023 as coal use fell sharply. The amount of coal transported in the United States fell 8% in 2023, continuing a trend in which coal shipments generally fell over the past 2 decades as coal's share of power generation has decreased. The amount of coal transported to power plants fell by more than half, and you can see the plot there. In 2010 to 2023, there was a lot of fall off in coal. I want to mention that the United States went from using a huge amount of coal relative to the number of people in the country to a very small amount of coal over the course of a time that is probably 120 years. I don't know exactly when, but it was before the First World War. The United States Navy stopped using coal in new ships that it was building or having built. And it started with destroyers. It switched the destroyers to oil, and then it went to larger vessels after that. And it was after the First World War that the coal industry in the United States hit its peak, and it started declining. We had over 800,000 coal miners in the United States in 1920. And when Donald Trump left office in 2021, there were something on the order of 35,000 coal miners in the United States. There are about 50,000 now. The Biden administration has done better, if you want to call it better, having coal miners work, but that's because primarily because it was shipping coal overseas, and that's not going to go on very much longer. Okay, we are up to July 19th, which is Friday. We have a picture of solar system. This is from MSN, and we have let me put that up. The title for this is Italy's renewable power output overtakes fossil fuels for the first time. Electricity produced from renewable sources in Italy in the first 6 months of the year surpassed the power generation from fossil fuels for the first time, the power grid operator Terna said. Italy plans to increase renewables to 63% of total electricity by the end of this decade. This is just an indication of where we're going with the use of renewable energy, and this is not atypical, as we will see in other things coming up later in this show. Okay, the next picture is a picture of a wind farm. You see the wind farm on the tops of the mountains in the distance? Yeah, you can see the wind turbines. When I first saw this picture, I didn't see them. And then I looked at the ridge line there and saw them. Okay, this is from Renews. Title is 176 megawatt New Zealand array hits full power. New Zealand's 176 megawatt Harapaki wind farm is fully operational, having been delivered within a month of its original completion date and inside its $448 million forecast. Renews does not say whether the $448 million is American dollars or New Zealand dollars. If it's New Zealand dollars, then that would be a bit over $300 million American. It is the country's second largest It is the country's second largest onshore array and is able to produce enough electricity to power 70,000 average homes. That business of 70,000 average homes is actually useful because, let me put that up. Did I have that up? I thought I did, but I didn't as I finished reading that. The array is on the mountains in the distance, on the tops of the mountains. The business of 70,000 homes there's a lot of variation in that depending upon where you are. In the United States, it would be probably significantly fewer homes than in New Zealand. Okay, our next item is from CNET, and what we have here is solar plus batteries. You can see the solar power in the distance and the batteries in the foreground. This is from CNET, and the title is, During Historic California Heat Wave, a Hero Emerged, Giant Solar-Powered Batteries. In California, an investment in solar batteries may have saved the state from widespread blackouts and brownouts during a heat wave from June 23rd to July 12th. That's a long heat wave. Palm Springs had a high of 124 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot. And the extreme heat put millions of citizens in the state at risk. When they say at risk, they mean at risk, risk in terms of their health, possibly at risk in terms of their lives. If anybody who didn't have air conditioning was likely to be in terrible trouble. And that was just true for anybody. I mean, there are homeless people in California, homeless people in Vermont who don't really have many places to go for to get out of the heat. And I've talked with a few. I have some friends who are homeless, and I've talked with them and said, "What do you do?" And they say, "Well, when the library's open, they can go to the library. They can't go into the co-op because they get kicked out. They're not allowed to go in there unless they're actual customers. They've been seen around there too much, but they have, you know, a right to life. It's guaranteed in the Constitution. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is that terminology is not in the Constitution, but it's in earlier documents. I believe that's in the Declaration of Independence, but I could be wrong. They have a right to life. They have a right to, and every person in this country has a right to life. And we don't have a right to tell them that they have to stay out in the heat when it's 124 degrees. And anybody who wants to tell them that should try doing it. That's just my opinion. Okay, we have a picture now of the Chuanshan wind farm. I'm sorry to say that I know I pronounced that wrong. I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's a sort of a representation of how it is transliterated. The source of this article is called Bastille, and I do not know why. It is a Chinese publication. The title is China's Renewable Energy Share in Power Generation Hits New High. And this is kind of astonishing. China's installed power generation capacity in new energy sources is growing rapidly as the share of electricity generated reaches an all-time high. From January to May, key national firms put over 70% of their total power investments into renewable energy generation. Now, the thing that's kind of, China is astonishing. I just have to say that China is astonishing. We in the United States could try to do things the way they do in China, and I am not talking about politically. I'm talking about other things. China is well, okay. This was in last week's show, and it is kind of an ongoing thing to talk about. Almost two-thirds of the amount of renewable energy capacity, generating capacity, that is being installed worldwide is being installed in China. China is producing, I don't know what percentage of solar photovoltaics. I just don't know. But several years ago, it was well over 90% of the world's supply of PV modules were being made in China. China is producing a huge percentage. I don't want to say most, not because it is it indicates a percentage that's too high, but because it might indicate to people a percentage that's too low. But certainly far more than the majority. It is most by any definition of that word you want. You can pick a definition that says most means more than half, or you can pick a definition that says most means over 90% or whatever. The chances are, if you say most of the EVs, electric vehicles made in the world, are made in China, you're going to be right, regardless of how you mean most. If it's electric buses, your chance that you're going to get an electric bus that's made someplace other than China, you'd have to genuinely search for that electric bus, because if you just go buy an electric bus and you don't specify a source, it's probably going to come from BYD. Tom would say BYD is initials that mean build your dreams. And he'd be right. And BYD, whose initials mean build your dreams in English, is a company that is headquartered in the Chinese city of Shenzhen, which is just across the border of Hong Kong into China. It's just north of Hong Kong. Hong Kong, of course, now being part of China. The Chinese have got really almost a stranglehold on renewable energy and energy efficiency and things like that. We should be putting such effort in ourselves in the United States. Why we should allow China to do that, I don't know. I think it's because we still have people who lie about climate change, despite the fact that we've had 13 months in a row that were the hottest months of their name ever. We've had 10 out of 10 years in a row, not breaking records in a row, but the 10 hottest years on record were the 10 latest years. And people say, oh, this isn't climate change, or it's not human-caused climate change. And there's plenty of reason to believe that human-caused climate change is happening because of activities by human beings. For one thing, it was predicted 150 years ago that this would happen. Not quite 150 years, but close to it. Okay, let's leave China and take a look at a solar array in England. This particular article is called, let's see, let me put it up, is from Renewable Energy Magazine. UK Energy Secretary slams fear-mongering over solar farm food security. Again, we've got people who want us not to get our act together in the United States and the UK, wherever. We have people who want us not to install renewable energy. They want to keep us on fossil fuels. Why? I think it varies. Ed Miliband condemned the myth that solar farms threaten national food security. He told the House of Commons, quote, "The biggest threat to nature and food security and to our rural communities is not solar panel or onshore wind, it is the climate crisis. And you know, we can see this playing out in the United States, in England, in wherever you want to put it. The climate crisis is causing a lot of mischief for our rural areas. We've got ticks in Vermont. We never had ticks. Because we've got ticks, we've got Lyme disease. The first reported Lyme disease in Vermont was reported in 1995, but it just spreads. And when the first ticks were seen in Vermont, which was a little before that, our moose didn't have ticks. Moose and ticks never had areas where they overlapped. Today, something over 80% of the moose calves born in New Hampshire die in their first year because they lose their blood to ticks. Moose have been found with as many as 70,000 ticks on them. How can you deny this? I don't know. Okay, we've got an item here from PV Magazine International, and we have a picture of a solar farm in Brazil. The title of the article is Grid Backlog Drives Innovative Approaches in Brazil. Grid connection queues in Brazil are offering new opportunities for energy storage and hybrid systems and opening new energy business models. Renewable companies are adding solar and batteries to their wind power sites to use existing transmission capacity. And I don't know that there's a need for me to go into that any more than that. So I think I'll just leave it at that. Basically, this article is just telling us, Brazil, by the way, is among the G7 nations, one of the G20 nations, one of the biggest in renewable energy. It gets 85% of its electricity from renewables. So it's way out ahead of the United States. Okay, we are up to Sunday, July 21st. I have a picture here of J.D. Vance, who is the Republican vice presidential candidate. The article is from Clean Technica, and the title is J.D. Vance and Climate Issues Blowin' with the Political Winds. Remember when flip-flopping on issues was a political death knell? No more. J.D. Vance, U.S. vice presidential candidate in the Trump/MAGA ticket, has vacillated about climate change many times since he entered politics. He once supported solar. Now he supports fracking. This change in position is kind of typical of what we can expect. I should mention that J.D. Vance doesn't seem to be helping Donald Trump in his pursuit of presidential office much. He is, well, Donald Trump is, I'll get back to it. Our next issue is from Yahoo. We have a picture of a little girl here. Cooling off, little girl. Okay, the title is 2024 could be the world's hottest year as June breaks records. Now, I've already mentioned this. Let me read the synopsis. Last month could be the hottest June on record. I will say, since seeing this, I've seen that validated. Every month since June 2023 has ranked as the planet's hottest since record began, compared with the corresponding month in previous years. This is according to the EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service, which said it in its monthly bulletin. Okay. That, I think, is pretty much established as a As they say, it's a thing. Let's just go on. Inside Climate News has the next item. This is a picture of tracking a supercell. There we go. As states recover from climate-related disasters, they also must prepare for future ones. This summer has brought a revolving door of climate-fueled disasters across the United States. For many states, recovery is no longer just about trying to return to normal, but rather rebuilding to prepare for future disasters as climate change accelerates. This is an issue that I think is big. And the reason I say that is because a few months ago, before we started seeing, a few months ago, we had just recovered from really bad drought in the West. California had no drought left. The atmospheric rivers had delivered to California a lot of water that had come down in rainstorms. That, you know, an atmospheric river is basically, if you see it from space, that's what it looks like. It looks like a river, a long, thin thing that just keeps running across the same territory, maintaining rain on a relatively narrow area, except that the atmospheric river can move north or south. It usually comes from the west and goes east. These atmospheric rivers, a series of them, ended the droughts in Oregon and California, and then farther inland. And no sooner was that done than we had the heat wave that I mentioned earlier, which just created a mess in California. So we went from having no drought to having wildfires in what seemed like a matter of days. And in fact, it was less than a matter of days, because we were having wildfires without the drought. The drought conditions are inducive to wildfires, but the wildfires don't actually need a drought to cause issues. So California was getting a lot of wildfires. It's happening again. We could hope, you know, that the drought that we've had in the past will not continue, and that the atmospheric rivers will not continue. But what we're getting is instead one kind of climate issue followed by another kind of climate issue, followed by perhaps a third kind of climate issue, or going back to the first kind of climate issue. The idea that we would have no issues going on, no climate disasters going on, the time that happens seems to be past. We're going to be having climate disasters, and they're just going to be going on and on. We are up to Monday, July 22nd, and we have a picture of Kamala Harris. I'm going to have to get this up. There we go. And Joe Biden, and this is from ABC News. ABC News means American Broadcast Corporation. I have two sources of information. One I call ABC. It isn't put up under ABC anymore, but if I try to put it up the way that it's expressed online, it's a problem, because Australian Broadcast Corporation is just too long on my lines, and it doesn't usually fit very well. So I call it ABC. On the show, I make sure that I have a distinction there. The title of this article is "Where Kamala Harris Stands on Green New Deal and Climate Change Initiatives." Vice President Kamala Harris has thrown her hat into the ring for the 2024 presidential race with President Joe Biden's endorsement following his announcement that he is stepping aside. Harris said she will make the climate crisis a top national security priority. Now, what's happening here is that Kamala Harris obviously is the vice president of the United States, first woman to be vice president of the United States. Kamala Harris is also mixed race. She's got, I think her father is black and her mother is Indian, which is why she's got the name Kamala. And by the way, just to throw things into an interesting mix, she happens to be Baptist, although she was raised to some extent as Hindu. Kamala Harris has been made the number one person running for the office of president when Joe Biden resigned his, not as president, but resigned his campaign to be president. She immediately was endorsed by a wide variety of organizations, people, you name it. And she has got a lot of support in her pursuit of office. She's had, I think at this point, well over $100 million in donations for her support. And the polling indicates that she is significantly ahead of Donald Trump for president. This all happened in a matter of days. And, you know, I'm not reporting a significant advantage to Kamala Harris in the polls because of wishful thinking. It's just, that's what it is. So she's taken over the lead in the presidential race in days, and President Biden has withdrawn from the competition and given her his endorsement. The Trump campaign, as I understand it, actually complained that the Democrats should refund money that they had put into preparing for attacks on Joe Biden, who had not actually been nominated yet. Kamala Harris has the votes, apparently, when the national convention takes place for the Democrats. She apparently has the votes kind of sewn up for to take that race. So we'll see how it happens, but apparently she's going to be running for president because when Joe Biden resigned, he had his people go for her. Now we have an item from MSN. We have a solar plant in Telanaga. Let me put that up. Okay. The title of this article is Renewable Energy Costs to See Big Drop, Tata Power CEO Prayer Sinha says. In India, Tata Power Company Limited expects energy storage and green power related costs to fall, quote, drastically, end quote, backed by technical innovations amid growing demand for uninterrupted power. And this is according to the Chief Executive and Managing Director, Praveer Sinha. Okay, what this means is that he is anticipating particular innovations coming into the marketplace. And that picture, by the way, is a picture of Tata Power solar plant. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. He is seeing big changes that he expects to come in to being because of solar power. So we'll see how that goes, but I think that he's right. You got to bear in mind, he knows what to expect. It's what his job is. We have a picture here of Zimbabwe. And I keep wanting to click on the photograph, but I'm supposed to click on a button on the monitor. This is from Clean Technica. Zimbabwe wants to increase rooftop solar adoption to address electricity generation shortfall. In a bid to get some generation capacity online ASAP, Zimbabwe is looking to speed up adoption of solar photovoltaics. The country's electricity and transmission and distribution company called for homes and businesses to install more rooftop solar. They have the idea, and this is probably correct, that if they get more rooftop solar installed, they're going to have more electricity. And that is something that is going to be important to them because their coal and power and hydro generating plants are not producing enough electricity for the country. So they have shortfalls, rolling blackouts and so forth, which is common in Africa, very common. And if they get people to be operating with rooftop solar on their houses and businesses, that'll give them more electricity. They will have less shortfall, and that's just the way that it is. Now, if they can combine batteries with that electricity, it will make a huge difference. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, July 23rd, and we have a picture of Glenwood Springs, Colorado. And Glenwood Springs is the home of Holy Cross Energy, which is an electricity co-op. This particular item came from ValeDaily.com. The title is Holy Cross Energy well on the way to getting 90% of its electricity from renewable sources. Holy Cross Energy has pledged to get 95 to 100% of its electricity from renewable sources by 2030. The electric co-op seems to be well ahead of schedule. CEO Brian Hannigan said by the end of 2023, it was using roughly 50% of renewable energy. They had 50% of energy by 2023 is pretty impressive. And, you know, really, one of the things about renewable energy is that it just goes in. It's kind of amazing how this works when you consider how nuclear power works. When you consider how nuclear power works, if you want to put in 50% of the electricity from nuclear power and you order it now, you're going to be lucky to get it in by 2040. But they're planning on getting 50% more in by 2030. And that's just 5 years. So let's go on. We have a picture of a farm here. There's one thing that I don't understand about this, and that is that sprayer in the background has wheels that look like they are not going to go between the rows, and I don't know why that would be. I'm not going to try to explain it. The picture comes from Idaho National Laboratory. This article is from Clean Technica, And the title is Agricultural Roots, Clean Food Without Pesticides. Weeds are the bane of all farmers. Chemical eradication has become the method of choice for controlling weeds. Farmers often spray or otherwise apply several weed-killing chemicals to their fields in a single season. Now, agricultural robots that remove weeds are becoming more common. This is an interesting thing. If you take just glyphosate, we've got lots of reports why glyphosate is causing trouble. Glyphosate is a mischief maker in terms of how human beings react to it. Glyphosate is used for apparently well over 90%, maybe over 95% of the corn grown in the United States. And there are people who are claiming all kinds of health problems result from its use. Now, glyphosate, as I understand it, is not permitted to be used in the European Union. They have banned its use altogether, and they want to see to it. I don't even know if we can ship food, corn, for example. I don't know if we could ship corn to the European Union. I doubt very much that we could. We would have to have corn that was certified to be glyphosate free. But it's not just corn. Glyphosate is used for all kinds of things. The one thing that you have to do with glyphosate is you have to, on agricultural crops with wide leaves like corn, you've got to make sure that the genetics of the crop have been modified so that the crop will grow despite the glyphosate. In other types of fields, glyphosate is apparently used for making the crops dry out more quickly. And it's just one of a whole series of different kinds of sprays that are put on the crops. We have glyphosate is keeping weeds down, but we've got other things that keep fungi down, that keep animals such as bugs away, that do all kinds of things that we don't need. And here what we are seeing is that robots can go down a field, down the row in a field, and find bugs, for example, and simply remove them, or weeds, for example, and simply remove them. So we may be seeing a big change in the use of glyphosate. Okay. We have a picture of Cape Town, and we have a title, Ramaphosa reveals 22,500 megawatts renewables pipeline in South Africa. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his first speech since forming a coalition government in May, said the nation is experiencing a, quote, renewable energy revolution, end quote, which with projects expecting to extract about 400 billion rand, which is $21.9 billion US, in private investment. And what is happening there is that Ramaphosa, you know, I think what I should do is just tell you, when I see headlines of this type, I don't know what to make of them, because the problems in South Africa have been persistent for many, many years, and I just don't know how to deal with that. They have had a problem with renewables, wind, solar primarily, and with nuclear power. The problem with nuclear power is they can't afford it. The problem with renewables has been in the past that they didn't believe that they could have reliable energy out of wind and solar. The problems just go on, and they have to figure it out. But here he's saying 22.5 gigawatts. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, July 24th, and we have an item from Renews. Ocean Winds forms Portuguese partnership. Ocean Winds and Martifer Renewables and Energy formed a partnership to take joint action in Portugal's first tender for offshore wind farms set to take place this year. The partners will provide clean energy projects aiming to contribute to Portugal's renewable energy targets of 2 gigawatts by 2030. Now, Portugal is actually getting out ahead in renewable energy. And, you know, these, let me put that back up. These floating offshore turbines, you can see the floats on the bottom of the one turbine. The yellow part is floats that hold up that turbine, and, you know, they do. The whole assembly there is anchored, so it's not going to go anyplace. And excuse me, that makes it possible to put the turbine in deep water that would be too deep for normal use. So that's what Portugal is doing. Our next item, pardon me, we have a picture of a PBY. This is what is called a Catalina. And of the aircraft that were used in the Second World War, this is the one that I have always found the most fascinating. They were used primarily for scouting, for finding downed flyers at sea, sailors who had fallen from ships or who had been on ships that sank, that kind of thing. This article is from Clean Technica. The title is Glory Days of Amphibious Aircraft Return, Hydrogen Fuel Cell Edition. Okay, the reason why the picture of the PBY is what was called a flying boat. And that's what it was. You know, it was a long-range aircraft that could be used to spot whatever. It was used right from the beginning of the war to find submarines so that Americans would have an advantage within its range. Excuse me again. The area where it could not fly, which was out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, was at the beginning of the war an area that was basically where the convoys had to be protected from submarines by whatever vessels that they had with them to protect them. And later there were jeep carriers and things like that took that. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty focusing on words because I'm trying to get the photographs switched back and forth. But what's happening is today we're starting to see flying boats brought back with hydrogen fuel cells. And there are a number of reasons why flying boats and amphibious aircraft are being used, not the least of which is the fact that you don't need a normal runway to land them or take them off. Okay, our last article is we have a picture here of a map of the world that has information about the amount of electricity that's available on the grid from renewable energy. And this is from Our World in Data. The title is 14 countries in the world get almost all of their electricity from renewables. Since 2020, 14 countries have consistently generated over 90%, 95% renewable electricity, according to Ember's yearly electricity data. In 8 of these countries, electricity has been almost entirely renewable based for over 20 years. I will tell you, let me put that up, that map. It's hard to see, but I will take you down a list. And I can't see all the places here, so I can't give you all the places in the that are renewable. But Iceland, Norway, Albania, Bhutan, Nepal, Kenya, Congo, and there's the Central African country, Rwanda, Paraguay, Costa Rica. There are other countries that are on the map and I just don't see them. But these countries are getting toward 100% renewable and more. Along with that, there's other countries. I happen to know that Brazil is 85%. Okay, we are up to the end of the show, and so I'm going to tell you to have an absolutely grand week. And for myself, I will wave goodbye. I will say, y'all come back now next time you're here. Did I get that right? I don't know. And I hope that you will get back to us next time. So there you have it, Energy Week. And we'll be back, at least that's what I plan. Goodbye.